Hello, welcome to What's Next. It's the Indy NXT Road Series. Apologies for that. I was trying to get the camera feed tapped on in here. We're here from a wet, soggy, dreary Charlotte ROVAL in its 2025 configuration, Sophie, and this is going to be perhaps the most treacherous wet race we've seen in the Indy NXT Road Series thus far.
Yes, this is a tricky track, even in the dry in a way, a deceptively tricky track. But now you've added in the wet conditions here, and that's going to make these slow corners, these chicanes, the kind of undulating nature of the infield section all the more trickier as these IL-15s navigate it, Jacob.
Yeah, we're riding out with Takumi Numata, who's picked up a couple of podiums to kick this season off. I think the first 2 weeks were third-place finishes for Numata. I could be corrected on that. Have to check my notes for that. But we're riding on board with the driver from Japan as he tackles the bankings of oval turn 1 and 2. He's going to dip nice and low on the banking here through the opening couple of oval turns here. Work his way down the back straightaway towards the first of the 2 chicanes that conclude this lap. Track out nice and close to the wall there. And what do you got, Sophie?
I was going to say, one of the things you notice there through that chicane, there's that big, massive puddle of water, because this is a NASCAR track, right? All that water is going to run downhill and is going to pool there on the back straight, and you have to cross that for the chicane.
I think the particularly more noteworthy one is that second chicane as we watch Numata stop on the course, abandon that charge up to the line. We'll hop out with two-time and defending series champ Jarrett Corey as he navigates the back straightaway here. You see puddle there on the left, puddle on the right. Pretty much a puddle the entire way through the driving line there on the backstretch chicane. He'll work his way towards that final chicane. And that seems to be the trickiest corner on the course here, is there's not really a spot you're traveling through to avoid any of the dampness heading down there, as you're in the thick of where the water would naturally pool coming off the oval banking here, Sophie.
Yeah, and we see Jarrett Corey, someone who knows how to wheel one of these machines, struggle through all that. And again, when you go into turn number 1, you just have to go through a massive puddle. There isn't really that much dampness. Like, we don't see as massive of a rooster tail coming off when you're going through other parts of this track, but then you have to hit these massive puddles. And that can really mess with the car, cause it to aquaplane, kind of behave in an unpredictable way. But a thing to keep in mind here, the track is lightly wet. And so, Jacob, you know, the tires are not necessarily going to like driving on a track that isn't super wet, but there's too many puddles to not run the wet tires. So I think tire management might play a slight factor here.
Well, the big thing, too, is the banking's going to be kind of the least wet part of the track, as it's naturally going to run down towards the apron. You see kind of the trail of water pick up as Costello will pick up provisional pole with a 1:15.297 here. So we watch Corey navigate 3 and 4. You see the banked portion, that rooster tail off the back of the car is lowest. Some of that might just be due to the speed of the car. Good amount of it's probably just due to a lower amount of water here as Corey's going to navigate this final chicane. Get down on the power. We'll see what he can put down for a time here. 15.207 it looks like, so he'll pip out 15.208 rather. So he'll pip out Costello by a little under 900ths of a second there. As he continues on his second flying lap here, we'll see if he can pick anything up. You've got Nick Dornick putting down a time. Good enough for 4th right now. Only 6 cars to have gotten the time in thus far. We'll see if the rest of... Oh, Corey's going to go
around. And hard into that tire barrier. Just pushing really too hard on the wet surface, and that's going to be all she wrote for Jarrett Corey. Corey is pushed down by Daniel Falkingham in that Lucky Charms livery. Falkingham working on his second flying lap here. Falkingham, no slouch to wet weather races, Jacob. I believe he won a wet Road Atlanta either last season or the season before that.
Yeah, we take a look at that. I believe Falkingham did pick up that win. That caught out the likes of a Jarrett Corey. I believe it also caught out Andre Castro in that race as well. It would have been 2 seasons ago, round 9, where he picked up the win over those two at Road Atlanta. Of course, he won last time out at Mid-Ohio. We kind of put the carrot on the stick in front of him, said we're going to the ROVAL, a track you might be a bit more familiar with, given he is a NASCAR Coca-Cola Series driver for a period of time. I believe he might have worked his way back into that series again this year. Not quite sure on that one. Someone will have to fact check me on that. But he has made the big leagues, if you will, on the NASCAR side of things, so he's very familiar with the ROVAL as he works his way through that final chicane.
Yes, and you would think he might be a little less familiar with the wet weather, but again, he has won in the wet and performs consistently. As he goes faster, still he was on pole, and I believe his last lap was slower. Currently sitting in second place is Jake King, who is coming around to complete his second lap, and he will set a 1:14.622 on that last lap.
So yeah, all but 2 of the 15 cars haven't gotten a time in. That'll include Drew Such, who has run out of laps, and Ty Keela, who has yet to get one in. We'll ride around with the Rogue Racing driver here in his recently recolored, revamped IL-15 here, the green and black and dark gray machine for Ty. He'll work through the final couple of corners, at least get the warm-up lap in, so he'll likely only get 1 lap here of green flag running here from Charlotte.
and I did. Oh, that's a poor run through the chicane. That's going to actually hurt his lap, Jacob, because again, you're trying to get the drive off the corner. It's going to cost him here into turn number 1. I did see some of his Alliance teammates in the session here to maybe spectate and cheer him on, like Seb Alexander. So hopefully, you know, Ty can put down a respectable enough lap or just kind of hold on to it. You never know with these events what can happen, as we've seen the likes of Jarrett Corey make a mistake here in qualifying, as Keela makes a big save there. Fast hands from Ty Keela.
Yeah, that's really what it's going to take around here to make it to the finish, I think, is being able to catch this car, react to it sliding about the surface, particularly into that front stretch chicane that, you know, you're slowing down onto an uneven surface, a very mixed set of different asphalts and kind of the grading of it. So it'll be interesting to see drivers navigate that lap after lap. That corner's tricky enough even in the dry, so once you add a little bit of dampness to it, you're only really adding fuel to the fire, if you will, as we're counting down to inside the final minute here. Ty Keela, last car out on track with a run yet to burn here, heads through oval 3 and 4. We got Casey Lee, I believe, chiming in the chat with his popcorn out. Ty Keela's going to get his popcorn out for getting a lap in qualifying here. Good enough to set a time, not setting the world on fire with a 1:18.644. But a long 18 laps left here to go from the Charlotte Roval. Going to have to wait and see how everybody gets on here. Looked like everybody opted for the wet tires here, Sophie, and I suspect we'll see the same in the race.
Yeah, I suspect we'll see the same in the race again, because those puddles are just too massive for the slick tire. This is kind of one of the debates when the track is kind of drying out when you would go. But the tires need to have heat in them to grip up, to have any chance gripping when the track is slightly wet. And they ain't going to be gripping with puddles that deep.
Yeah, so we'll wait for cars to take to the grid here. Get the scenic camera looking about the course. I was correct. Numata did open up the season with a pair of third-place finishes. Had a bit of a rough go at Mid-Ohio, ultimately falling prey to an incident in the China Beach section of the course. Kind of in the later stages of that one. Was in qualified near the front, was struggling holding on to that car ahead of a slew of hot shoes behind him. But we'll see if he can maybe work his way through the field here, as he'll be starting deep back in the 11th spot. Got a couple cars haven't taken to the grid already. We'll get down to them now. There's Jake King. He'll line up outside of the front row. We'll give Falkingham his due, as we do get a full pace lap around here, so it gives us some time to run through the starting lineup once the cars actually get here. See if anybody opts to take the risk of dries. So far, everybody on the grid is on the wet tire. Brother Max King rooting on Jake. Good to see him back in the crowd. Appreciate everybody for joining us here from the Charlotte Roval. Just 3 cars left to take the grid. There's the first of the 3 left to come, and we'll start running through the starting lineup as a result. And it will be none other than Daniel Falkingham picking up right where he left off on the pole position with a 1:14.393. Alongside him will be Jake King in the number 4 with a 14.623. Two-time defending series champ Jarrett Curry will put down the lap time good enough for third. He'll line up alongside Eclipse Competition's Michael Costello, the real USF Pro 2000 driver, making another appearance here on the channel. Dylan Vilashinsky for Get Good Racing will line up in the 5th spot. The two-time reigning and defending Indy NXT Oval Series champion will line up 5th alongside John Wells in the 14 car. Kenneth Smith's back for more, piloting our number 9 machine alongside Nick Dwornik in the 8. David Clennon and Chris Wetz will round out the top 10. Chris Wetz sporting the plain white wrapper. Way further down, you got Takumi Numata looking to pick up a lot of spots as he'll start 11th alongside Stanley Knaus. Rilo Diaz will be 13th alongside Ty Keela. Last car to get time in, and the other Eclipse Competition machine of Drew Such will round out our 15-car field here from the Charlotte Roval. I believe the strength of field was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500.
Yes, and you can see everyone working hard to try and get heat in the tires. Falkingham was kind of weaving a bit. It's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out here. Some aggressive drivers on the second row there. Some accomplished drivers there as well. And then, of course, you have Daniel Falkingham, who streaked away from the field at Mid-Ohio in the dry and obviously has won in the wet at Road Atlanta. Should be an interesting race for us, Jacob, as we're on to NASCAR, I believe on to 1 and 2.
Cars working to the back straightaway now. You see King and Falkingham kind of revving up and slowing down, maybe trying to get some heat in the tires here. Kind of the trademark move for many an iRacer to try to build up that tire heat is just to do a bit of lunging, if you will, here as we work our way towards that first of 2 chicanes that conclude this lap. There they head towards the center of the backstretch, and that chicane's right there, ready to greet them. They'll work through that puddle that you can see very predominantly through the entry there, work their way through an additional couple of puddles on the exit, work their way back to the oval. And we'll head through oval 3 and 4, and I believe the green flag kind of comes out in the midst of that final chicane here, Sophie, which will present its own unique challenge for these drivers as this race will get underway in due time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who can get the power down when the green flag flies. Daniel Falkingham set to get control of the field as that Porsche pace car drops down into pit lane.
Falkingham will be underway into the puddle. Big slide for him, but he holds on to it. Single file. Corey gets shuffled down to 4th. Costello picks up the 3rd spot.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate start for Jarrett Corey, who's now under fire from John Wells. An aggressive move by Costello, something that he's kind of known for, as he sets his sights on trying to get a hold of Jake King and Daniel Falkingham, who are running nose to tail right now. All of them running out well onto that painted part of the track, just trying to use all of it to try and decrease the radius, ask the tires to do as little as possible while it's going as fast as possible. Falkingham goes defensive. Costello with the lunge there, and just kind of barges his way past Jake King there.
Yeah, it'll be side by side into oval 1 and 2 here. We saw Falkingham nearly run off the track kind of in that back stretch, or I guess mid stretch there in the infield there. They'll be side by side as here comes Costello to the inside.
Costello lunges deep into the chicane there. He is now having where Jake King gets a run, and Falkingham kind of gives Jake King the draft, deliberately running up a lane to not help Costello. I wonder if he has some thoughts about that, as King is now the one on the inside in the chicane. He's going to clear Costello. Costello gets twitchy off the corner.
Seems to be a clean first lap so far. Falkingham's busted out a 0.6 of a second lead for a brief moment there. They'll work their way through the puddle. About a half a second now between King and Falkingham this time around. We'll see if the field bunches back up through the infield here. So it'll be Falkingham, King, Costello, Corey, and Wells, the top 5. Dwornik, Vilashinsky, Smith, Wetz, Knaus, the top 10, and then the rest of the field running the way, rest of the way down. JT Speeton rooting on Jarrett Corey, his former teammate, Luke Mansky Racing. Now I believe on the Nexus squad, if I recall correctly.
I do believe that is correct, Jacob, as right now Jake King has his mirrors full of the Eclipse competition machine, the black, purple, and white car of Michael Costello. He's going to go for another lunge, manages to clear him into the corner. Costello pounds the curbs there, and kind of runs up, kind of gives Jake King a little bit of a nudge. King pulls into the draft. That's going to give Costello the position, but a very aggressive move that ultimately did pay off for him, but very nearly didn't.
And that's kind of just the nature of the beast with getting into those chicanes in general, as Costello will go purple that time with a 114.159.
Oh, he got loose! He got loose, and that gave the position right back to King.
So that aggression is very much quick, but it can bite him just as quickly as he'll fall back to third. He'll have to set it back up all again to work his way.
Oh, he's off into the grass.
Don't think that's the race course, Mr. Costello. He's going to get it back onto the track. Fighting that IL-15 tooth and nail here to try to keep up with Jake King. Bulkingham skirted away to now nearly 9/10 of a second over second place.
And this is exactly what happened at Mid-Ohio, Jacob. The two cars up in front and second and third were battling hard, and this allowed Bulkingham just didn't have to watch his mirrors, didn't have to watch his line, to just do what he needed to do. Now, another thing to keep in mind here, Jacob, is there is an incident limit where we'll have to go through a drive-through. And Michael Costello has been kind of beaten off of other people, been kind of running wide. He's definitely gotten a couple of off tracks at this point. If he's not careful, he could find himself having to do a drive-through, and instead of having a podium, he might have it all end in tears, not even through an accident, but through just making a mistake and going off track too many times.
Well, we saw Jarrett Corey, I believe, miss the final chicane, have to slow down and serve a slowdown penalty, so that let John Wells on through, who proceeded to get loose in the opening corner. Costello's looking back on Jake King, takes that second spot away. He'll be looking to hunt down Bulkingham for the point.
And while that's happening, there's a big battle, or was. Dylan Walashinsky was all over the back of John Wells there. And Nick Dwornik, as Corey streaks away from them, as there's a fight over the fifth spot between Wells and Dwornik, with Walashinsky, the reigning Oval Series champion, just in the background.
And I think that little marker behind the, what I guess would be the zero board there going into that backstretch chicane is basically how we've been reacting to Costello's moves or maneuvers through that chicane every lap. Oh, poop, as he continues to work a very hard charge. He's closed up immensely. Oh, he missed the corner.
He missed the corner and got very loose, nearly spun it. He is pushing hard, Jacob. That's something we can say. You know, there's this, you know, you could be pushing really, really hard, but if you push too hard and you lose it, it doesn't matter how fast you were, how many purple laps you set.
Oh!
So, we hear a car around
That's
in
Jake
the background. King. Yeah, Jake King had a massive moment.
He's going to be under fire from Nick Dwornik into the hairpin here. Dwornik's going to have the inside. Now under fires from Wells. That'll put King down to at least the fifth spot, if not the sixth spot here, as Jarrett Corey will take the bottom step of the podium now.
Yeah, let's see what happened to him. Oh, it looks like he just caught a little bit too much in the entry of the maybe of the wet paint, and it just sent him around off into the grass. He recovers quickly, but again loses a bunch of positions, and that kind of gives Michael Costello some breathing room as he tries to hunt down Daniel Bulkingham. Yeah, Costello really being aggressive over those curbs. The thing is, he's not really making inroads on Bulkingham. Bulkingham is just that little bit quicker. And one of the reasons I think so, Jacob, is Bulkingham really isn't pounding the curbs. He's really not making sharp inputs. He's just being very smooth, very methodical, very calm. And I think that's paying off for him.
And I think the big thing we're starting to see here is patience paying off, at least to a good extent here, is Falkingham's been immensely rewarded for kind of that methodical drive here. He hasn't made any big mistakes. The big thing that we'll also point out is you'll see the tower light up as Costello goes on the button. Push to pass is perfectly well and available here, and Costello's used a good bit of it already. 25 seconds of it, in fact, is Falkingham has not touched his button at all, so he's likely banking on being able to use that in the closing stages of this race to fend off a hard-charging Michael Costello.
Yeah, and Costello is trying to close that gap as much as possible. As they head into the final chicane, big rooster tails kicked up as they cross over that puddle. Costello has closed the gap a little bit there, as Costello did a 14.3 compared to Falkingham's 14.7, closed up 4/10 just that lap. So Falkingham does have to kind of keep an eye out. They run through all that extra pavement. They're kind of having to turn in early. They really don't want to be on that painted road there, because that's going to be extra slippy as they go to load in for some of these high-speed corners. That's one of the changes with this new layout, Jacob. It used to be kind of a left-right section over a crest of a hill. It was kind of a technical challenge, but with the 2025 version, they kind of have now where it's a lot flatter, a lot more high speed.
Yeah, you've kind of got the lone crest up over the middle of what is basically a straightaway connecting two right-hand corners now, as opposed to the right-left that faded into another left to get back onto the oval there. So it definitely offers a different and unique challenge here. I think what we caught with Jake King there is he tucked in too far over to the inside, grabbed kind of the dip in the pavement on the first of those two right-handers, and went for that extended slide. He's recovered to the fourth spot now, making it back by Nick Dwornik. He's got about 3.5 seconds to pick up to make it back into that bottom step of the podium place, currently held by Jarrett Cohen.
Yeah, and some race updates here. Ty Keela is in the pit lane, likely due to an issue. And then Stanley Knaus and Drew Such both have disconnected from the server and are out of the race. Oh, Costello is around. Costello kept it out of the wall.
Falkingham nearly did the same.
Yeah, Falkingham nearly did the same. Costello runs really deep there. Really pushing hard, trying to close down that gap, and that gap has instead opened up further to 1.2 seconds right now.
Gap 1.2 seconds. Different in push to pass is 25 seconds as Falkingham sits on 55 to Costello's 30. Jarrett Corey's finally going to make use of his button. He's down to 61 now. We'll get that number up on the screen for everybody. So we'll get gaps up there first. Then we'll move up to push to pass remaining. So Corey will get on the button again. Jake King's used over half of his. Dwornik as well. Vilashinsky sits on 45. Smith 40. Wetz has yet to get on the button at all, as does David Klett and Numata on 40. As Costello closes right back up to Falkingham. I think if he could string the laps together, Costello's got the fastest car on track.
Yeah, I think he is very quick. Again, the question is whether or not he can kind of control the car well enough to keep that pace consistent, because again, he's caught up to Falkingham, but then he just makes a mistake and then drops back a little bit and has a moment.
And we'll head through the second right-hander here into this hairpin. Very tricky, as you see a lot of puddles kind of built up on the entry in the braking zone there. Costello's going to pick up a little bit of time through the entry there, as he's now inside 0.8 of a second here as they work their way through oval 1 and 2 rather, onto the back straightaway here into that first chicane. Here they come. Costello using good amounts of the curb there. He closes right up to the back of Falkingham.
Yeah, he is way braver on the entry to that chicane than Daniel Falkingham is. And another race update, John Wells in that yellow and blue Bilstein car, who we saw running up there with Jarrett Corey, Nick Dwornik, and obviously the recovering Jake King. He has retired from the race and has disconnected from the server.
Unfortunate break for the 14, was in for a good night. We saw his big slide after Corey's mistake into the final chicane. Ultimately got caught out due to another mishap in just a couple laps following that. Costello sits just inside 0.8 of a second once again. He kind of struggles in the infield portion of this track, but seems to be able to make up for it kind of in those two chicanes here, Sophie.
Yeah, he is very brave on entry, and that's where he's really closing up. He closes up really deeply in the chicane there. He couldn't get the car turned there, and that's going to really open up the gap again. Gap now back to a second, but he's really brave on the entry, and I'm wondering if maybe he's just overcharging those infield corners, because that's a little bit more technical, needs a little bit more flow, whereas these heavy braking zones require a different skill set. And that really kind of rewards that overcharging. So I wonder if that's kind of why we're seeing what we're seeing out right now, Jacob.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game here. If Costello could kind of put the whole lap together, I think he's right there with Falkingham. We just got to wait and see if that comes here. As he gets within half a second now as they cross the line. They'll head into turn number 1. Working just a little past the halfway mark as we work lap 11 of 18 here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow night with the Oval Series at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Richmond, which follows up our IndyCar Oval Fixed Series coverage that'll take place from New Hampshire, 8:15 Eastern Time on that. As Costello continues to hunt Falkingham here at the point. Thank Whiplash Shipcams for providing cameras tonight. They've done a solid job with these ones here from the Charlotte Roval. Need some cameras for photography or broadcasting or whatever you else need for cameras here on iRacing, go check them out, Whiplash Shimcams. For those, so we work the back straightaway, and this is kind of the closest Costello's been. Is he going to make a big lunge here once again?
I don't think so, because he took a big fight out of those curves and got really loose, over-revved the engine a little bit there. If it's bouncing off the limiter, just doing everything he can to keep it under control while doing that. Not necessarily the most ideal way to be, but it seems to be working for him.
Yeah, he closes in.
Way up.
Here, a bit of a slide for at least one of these two cars on screen off the exit of turn number 1 there. Falkingham's going to pull out of a little bit of a gap here, about a 10th gain here in the first couple corners of the infield here. This is where Falkingham's been stronger. I just think that Costello's got so much in those final couple corners that it's going to be tough to hold him off.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed is that Falkingham runs a lot more of a defensive traditional wet line into the braking zone for that hairpin, and that's really kind of why I wonder if we see Costello struggle massively there. Gap opens back up to a full second. He is trying to brake on the traditional racing line, and in the wet, that's just not going to be where you want to brake, Jacob.
I think some of that, too, just comes down to how limited you are for lines here at the Roval. Big slide for Costello.
Big slide. Yeah, he is really trying to put the power down to close up that gap after another mistake.
And I think Costello's getting desperate here. He's burned a lot of push to pass this lap. He's down to 10 seconds to Falkingham's 48. It might just come down to who's got button to push here, Sophie.
Yeah, we are working lap 13 of 18. He is really pushing hard. One thing you cannot say is that he did not give everything he has to try and get around Daniel Falkingham. As he again is sliding the car off the corner there.
It closes back up inside 6/10 now. They'll head through the second to the rights here, get set up for that hairpin. This has kind of been Costello's Achilles heel, if you will, working through this hairpin. He tucks it in nice and tight, gets the power down solid this time. He's right back in the thick of it. Someone who else is getting into the thick of it is Dylan Vilashinsky on the back of Nick Dwornik. That gap's about half a second as well. Move back to that battle, but let's see what happens with Costello here into the chicane.
Kind of lets the car roll in, and Falkingham kind of ends up... Falkingham really kind of slows up at that second part of the chicane, but that really lets him get the power down, whereas Costello, rolling a lot of speed through the corner, has to let the car settle before he can get back on the power. It's a little interesting dynamic that I'm noting there as Falkingham kind of grabs the wall a little bit there.
So Costello is now officially out of push to pass. Falkingham sits on 38 seconds. Move back to that battle for the 5th spot for a little while here as they're working their way through the final chicane now. Here comes Nick Dwornik and Dylan Vilashinsky for 5th. They'll cross the line here as Vilashinsky closes in. See if he makes a move into 1. He does not. Oh, Dwornik runs wide. They'll be side by side on the exit. Bit of lifting there through the left-hander there. Vilashinsky's going to try maybe an over-under here through the right-handers. Almost to the inside. He's going to get the power down a bit better than Dwornik. He'll have the inside line heading into this next right. Dwornik runs wide. Here comes Vilashinsky to the inside again. Not quite there. They're going to head towards the hairpin now.
And it looks like Dwornik had a little bit of a blinking moment there. Vilashinsky took a wider line through there. Really is now trying to tuck up under the wing of Dwornik.
Let's move back to the battle for the lead.
Costello cuts the chicane. That's going to be a slowdown. That's going to be another incident point. But he ain't slowing down.
And some of that, too, might just be how slowed down the track is in the wet conditions compared to the dry here. This is a couple seconds, a lap slower than the conditions we were getting in dry conditions via our track guide this week. Working our way through the final couple corners here. Sorry, to the hairpin, rather. Here comes Costello to the inside, gets the power down, has a bit of a bobble on the exit there. Costello, no push to pass as Falkingham gets on the button. That allows Falkingham to stretch away just a little bit here.
Yeah, and while we are away, Jake King has caught up to Jarrett Corey.
Crash!
Oh, Costello!
Costello missed the chicane, makes contact with Falkingham. Looks like Costello might have got away with that. Meatball for Falkingham. Let's see what happened there.
Falkingham is destroyed. Costello is spamming sorry in the chat. You know, he is currently going through the final chicane there. He's got Jarrett Corey 4 seconds back. Falkingham's day is done.
So here they come into the chicane. Costello grabs the curb, just kind of shoots straight and jumps over the second set of turtles there. Right into the path of Falkingham. Falkingham up into the air will send Costello spinning. Falkingham gets the brunt of it as he goes head-on into the inside wall. That'll take him out of that one. And as it looks like we might have caught, there might have been another incident further in the field as Takumi Numato's worked his way up to the 6th spot. Not sure how he got up there. Kenneth Smith's fallen to 7th.
Yeah, let's, one of the things I've noticed is that Costello is really sliding the car, and I wonder if this is what's kind of contributed to the incident. Obviously, he was really pushing that entry. He's asking the tires to do more and more as the track dries out, and he's been really pushing those tires. I wonder if he just didn't have the grip he was expecting. Still a very overly aggressive move. And a little bit of a controversy here. If you go to the end of lap 15, Numata skipped the chicane similar to Costello, except he passed Kenneth Smith to do it and then just served the slowdown. While iRacing might not penalize you for that in a session, Jacob, I believe they might view that as a bit naughty.
Well, Jarrett Corey at least slowed down for his. He's going to maintain the spot from Jake King, I believe, just barely here. They're fighting for second here.
Yeah, and we're in 2 laps to go territory, so gonna be elbows out as Corey goes defensive, really backs up the chicane. King gets loose as he is stuck behind Corey as Corey parks the bus.
That'll give Corey at least a bit of a reprieve here heading into the first of the 2 chicanes. He's at a push-to-pass disadvantage to King, as King's got 16, Jarrett's on 7.
Ooh, and a big mistake in the back as Dwornik runs wide. That's going to let Numata back through as Numata lets Kenneth Smith by. And you know who really benefited from that? Dylan Vilashinsky. We really haven't talked a lot about him on the roadside here, Jacob. Just kind of been a solid mid-pack. Not setting the world on fire, but not, you know, not doing anything too naughty. He did have that big incident with Such at Silverstone. But it's been a solid run for the traditionally oval side Get Good Racing driver.
Yeah, good to see him working inside the top 5 now as Numata misses the chicane again. Not sure if maybe he got help that time. He was running awfully deep into that corner. He's going to have to serve another slowdown for sure.
Oh, and Costello grabs the wall again.
Doesn't seem to be any worse for wear.
No, but he is really, really sliding that car, and it's the last lap. He doesn't need to be doing that. He has a 5-second lead.
We'll hop back to the battle for second as that is still under contention here. Answer the question in the chat from iCrashing. Yes, this is the official series for the Indy NXT Road Series here on iRacing. This is our weekly top split broadcast SOF. Well, we're just about to conclude tonight's race from the Charlotte Roval as Michael Costello will pick up the win. We're holding on to the battle for second here as Kings maybe got one shot at it if he could get a big one.
Costello nearly spun coming to the checkered as Corey fends off Jake King in a valiant effort from King to recover from his mistake and Corey.
Here comes Numata on Vilashinsky in the final chicane. Contact!
Oh! Contact. Numata just kind of barged through there, and I think that's going to cost Jake King a bunch of, Vilashinsky a bunch of spots because he has to serve a slowdown because he couldn't make the corner even though he slowed down to make the corner. A lot of controversial driving into these chicanes tonight, Jacob.
It's not technically an infrequent thing for this track, even in the dry either, Sophie. It's really difficult to go side by side, particularly into that final chicane and go unscathed. So it's unfortunate to see kind of the wet weather rear its ugly head with the side by side action in the closing stages here. But let's run through the finishing lineup from tonight's Strength of Field broadcast here from the Charlotte Roval for the Indy NXT Road Series. I believe the Strength of Field was 3,536 here this evening. So let's get to the finishing results here as we watch Dylan Vilashinsky continue to circulate. Michael Costello with the win, 5.4 seconds back to Jarrett Corey, who will pick up a second place finish here. Jake King will round out the podium. Kenneth Smith, Dylan Vilashinsky, the bottom portion of the top 5. Takumi Numata will fall to 6th. Nick Dwornik, Chris Wetz, David Cledden, Murillo Diaz will be the top 10. Final couple of cars in the field tonight will be Daniel Falkingham. We saw that incident between himself and Costello with a handful of laps to go. That'll take him out of potentially winning this race. John Wells finishes 12th. Ty Keela, 13th. Not entirely sure what happened to him, but likely early off for him, resulting in a damaged IL-15 for him. Stanley Knaus, Drew Such, the other Eclipse competition machine, bookending the field here tonight. And we'll talk to some podium finishes here from the Charlotte Roval. See what they have to say after a very, very wet and wild race here, Sophie.
Yeah, a very wet and wild and controversial race here at the Charlotte Roval. We look forward to talking with some of our podium finishers and potentially our winner tonight.
And we'll make sure we get the link in the chat in case anybody new's looking for us. There's Vilashinsky's car parked now in the pit lane. Let's go see if we can hunt down the number 4 machine of Jake King. There we go. We've tracked him down. Get his race stats up on the screen. We'll get him on up here, see what he has to say following another podium finish. Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting. You got us?
Loud and clear.
Well, it seemed to be the battle of who could survive and survive with their car pointing, I guess, the right direction the longest here from the Charlotte Roval. We saw you have your big slide kind of in the infield portion fairly early on in this race, but a recovery to third following a lot of the late race chaos here is not a bad way to end off a wet and wild race here from Charlotte. Talk us through it here tonight.
Yeah, just happy to get a podium. Had a good quali. It's always good when you're starting next to Falkingham. That guy's quick. I thought we had the pace to stay up at the front. Third place, the guy that started third or fourth, Castiello, was super aggressive, so I figured I would just kind of follow him. Got into the wrong batch of puddles on the exit of turn one on lap three. Gave myself a little bit of wheel damage, and then that spin just put a ribbon on it. So at that rate, it was just clawing my way back and getting all the positions that I could. Burned up my button pretty significantly too, trying to work my way back up and get all that traffic.
Yeah, and it certainly seemed that a lot of people were doing that throughout this race. We saw Costello in a pretty big push-to-pass deficit himself, battling Falkingham throughout this race. And kind of talk us through what it's like having to manage not only the track, but you've obviously got the push-to-pass here, which is fairly beneficial given the long straightaways and the oval corners here at Charlotte. It seems like that there was a lot of very tricky spots to be put in positions, maybe offline around here, particularly into those chicanes. Was there maybe some thoughts in the back of your head as to how to set up just being in the right place at the right time through those very tricky corners?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a chess match when you're driving these cars and using the push to pass, but even more so on an oval road course. The track dried up really quickly. So as far as different spots on the track, I mean, there were some spots where there was still standing water, but for the most part, you could push really hard. And then you kind of don't want to push too hard. And I think I burned up my tires pretty good chasing Jarrett there. And knew I was catching him really rapidly with how the car could manage the curbs into that final chicane. And tried to manage my push a pass. That last corner leading onto the oval, that sharp left hand hairpin, I spun the wheels up pretty bad in the standing water there, and then kind of blew all the gains that I got on Jared. But it was a lot of fun. It was super challenging, and I'm just happy to come away with third after all that calamity.
Yeah, certainly very tricky all the way around this track. It seemed like if you could even get the power down was going to be a dice roll to say the least. Sophie, you got anything for Jake tonight?
Well, Jake, obviously, the contact that happened at the beginning of the race. How much were you kind of just wanting to keep your nose clean after those opening laps? And obviously, you had your sliding that contact, but how much were you just worried about people going to those chicanes, given how treacherous those have been? And there seemed to be a lot of incidents tonight in those chicanes.
Yeah, I mean, I was slightly worried when I fell back into, I think it was P6 or P7 that I fell back to, because I know those guys had a scrap of their own that I kind of just threw myself in the middle of after that spin. But once I was able to work myself clear and battle through that, I had a relatively clean track around me, and it was just sights set on Jarrett. He was my rabbit. I was chasing around and gaining a couple tenths a lap on. So I mean, it wasn't too tricky. I saw there was some calamity at the front, but after you see how the track evolves throughout the race, it might be a little bit easier for us to see from the cockpit. It was pretty clear cut on where you had to run and where you didn't want to put your car.
Well, you put your car in right enough places at right enough times here to pick up a podium. Back to back here for you in the Indy NXT Road Series. Jake, you know the drill. Friends, family, sponsors, anybody you'd like to shout out, floor is yours.
Yep. Shout out Max. He's always watching. That's my brother. Hopefully he can get into one of these races sometime soon. And shout out to some of my sponsors: Triple T Cutting Tools, Turf Trade, Homestead Realty, Sisters Jewelry in Mulca Hill, New Jersey. Just a lot of guys that help me out in my racing efforts, and want to shout them out here. So thank you guys for a great broadcast. Really cool that you guys keep this stuff going.
Well, we'll appreciate you for joining us once again here, Jake. Congrats on the finish here tonight. We'll hopefully catch you out next week as the series heads back across the ocean to the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben.
That'll be fun. See you guys there.
Have a good one, Mr. King. And that'll do it for Jake here from the Charlotte Roval. We'll move on to defending series champ Jarrett Corey as he picks up a second place finish here tonight. Get the cameras a bit closer up on Mr. Corey here. Bring him on up. Jarrett, Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting. You got us?
Yep.
Well, it kind of turned into you became best of the rest here as Falkingham and Costello fought tooth and nail here. Obviously, Jake King had his off, and you had to fend him off in the late stages here. But walk us through some of the things you had to tackle here behind the wheel of the IL-15 here from a wet and wild Charlotte Roval.
The puddles, Costello, and myself. Because I I don't know if there's a track in iRacing that's got like much worse. Like this is VIR is pretty bad as far as puddles are concerned, but this has definitely got to be up there because some of those places, parts of the track, like the chicanes, hairpin, like those puddles, like this is a lightly wet track, and normally those kind of puddles show up on like moderately wet. Um, it just felt extremely bad compared to like most other tracks. I think it had some parts of the track that are completely dry. Like unfortunately, those parts of the track are mostly straights and the banking. Because we were able to just drive low. If it was a wetter track, we would have definitely had to drive in the middle of the track there to not been out. But yeah, I mean, it's just trying to survive, and I think if I like pushed really hard, I could maybe keep up with those guys. But I sort of knew the point situation, like, and I've already wrecked once this season, so I probably shouldn't do that again. But knowing that Andre and Aiden aren't here, and nobody in the field that I think is going to be a serious challenger over the season is like like here, like the soft is big because a lot of like the drivers showed up and like it split at a fairly low number. It was only a 15 car field, so I just knew I just need to finish on the podium, even P4, and I could just get some good points. So I did that, and so I am satisfied, although I am annoyed about um, who won this race.
Well, we could save that for the time in between, if you will, on the rest of those comments. But ultimately, this was a battle of essentially keeping your car pointed straighter than everybody else's. I guess pointed in the right direction. You had to turn it at some point. This isn't drag racing, as cool as that may be in an open wheel car. Kind of talk us through tackling especially the kind of high speed infield section around here. Seemed like it was very easy to kind of misjudge just how much speed you were carrying and have yourself some wild offs that we saw the likes of Michael Costello and Falkingham have to correct at various points in time. Obviously, the chicanes were tricky for everybody. I think pretty much half the field had missed at least one of the chicanes at least once tonight here this evening. So was there maybe some adjustments you had to make that were maybe a bit atypical in this IL-15 to tackle all this tonight?
I had to move the brake bias pretty far back. Like I think I went down to like 48.8 or something like that. Like um I had to move it back over a race. I think maybe I could have started further back, but um I think the track sort of dried up a tiny bit and the tires were maybe overheating, and I think the wet tires also wear a little bit more in the front, like which is the opposite of the dry tires. So I mean, typically you wouldn't probably move the brake bias back on dry conditions, but in the wet, I had to do that. Apart from that, just being really easy under braking. I mean, I went off once and like um that one I was a bit confused about, but I think I just hit the puddle at a weird angle, or maybe like the slightly more rubbered part of the track, like the rubber sort of built up on the racing line. I might have hit that instead of hitting it more in the middle off of where the rubber would have been. So I mean, after that, I was being a bit cautious, and maybe part of that was why Jake King definitely seemed way quicker to me in that final chicane. At the same time, I don't think I really could have pushed it that much harder. So yeah, I mean, it was just a tricky one, but I managed to come out of it in a decent spot at the end. So I'm pleased enough with that.
Hey, you certainly always got to be driving within your abilities, within your means, if you will. Sophie, you got anything for Jarrett tonight?
Well, Jared, I think you kind of covered all of the race, the varying hazards around the track. Uh, how were you managing to fare when it came to holding off Jake King in general? It felt like you were really taking defensive lines into that hairpin. Is there any other tricks you were really employing to kind of get the power down enough to make it difficult for him?
Uh, Not really in particular. Like I was pushing an infield bit just because I knew that seemed to be the place where I was maybe a tenth quicker than him, 10 for 2 quicker than him, and I could sort of open up the gap a tiny bit. The one time I did have to go defensive in the hairpin, I sort of like I didn't want him to find him up my inside, and then that would just be the position gone. But I also knew he had opened up the corner, seeing that, and so I just sort of parked it. And that sort of allowed me to prevent him from getting a good exit, and just sort of saved me from getting past there. So I mean, I didn't have to end up being that defensive. But I mean, there was some.
Well, however the defense gets there, or however much of it there was, you finished second here tonight, Jarrett. You know the drill. Friends, family, sponsors. Anybody like to shout out? Floor is yours.
Yeah, Rogue Racing, P1 Broadcasting, for doing this. Shout out to Ty's computer for failing him. I'm pretty sure he was having some pretty big FPS issues this race. So sucks for him, because I know what it's like, because I've had those issues before. So yeah, that's all I've got.
Well, thank you for joining us here once again, Jarrett. We'll head back across the ocean for the next round as we head to the Motorsport Arena Oschersleben for the very first time.
Yep, I'm kind of looking forward to that one. I think I've raced that one in the USF before, and it was reasonably enjoyable. So I'm sure it'll be somewhat fun in this car.
Well, we'll certainly catch you there. Go out and celebrate tonight. P2.
Yeah.
That'll do it for Mr. Corey. And we'll get Michael Costello up on the screen, although I do not believe he's joined us in the interview room. So we'll kind of talk through closing thoughts here. Sophie, it was a wet and wild one here from the Charlotte ROVAL. 29 cars, I believe, took to this slot. We had the top 15 of them here, and Michael Costello will come out on top in controversial fashion, as many would say. What say you?
I think if I speak, I am in big trouble. Amazing drive by Daniel Falkingham, as well as Jared Corey, and an amazing comeback for Jake King. Wet and wild race, but you know what? We're gonna go to a fantastic, underrated track here on the service at Oschersleben. So yeah, look forward to next week, Jacob. And tomorrow night we have Richmond, so excellent oval action here on P1 Broadcasting.
Yeah, of course, we'll be back tomorrow night. We'll thank everybody for joining us once again. Obviously, Oschersleben next week. It's site of that corner where I believe the quote is that whoever designed this first corner should be taken in a dark room and beaten about the head. We're not driving that corner. We're driving the one they fixed it with in the Grand Prix layout. So fortunately, we will not have to find the course designer and beat him around the head in a dark room. We got it figured out here for the Indy NXT Road Series. We're on a track that's normally an oval. I'm staring at it and I'm like, wait, where am I? And that'll do it for round number 4 of 2026 Season 3 in the Indy NXT Road Series. We thank everybody for joining us here once again. Thank those that do all the difficult jobs all around the world to make it possible for us to bring you the likes of the Indy NXT Road Series here on P1 Broadcasting. Have a good night, everybody. We will catch you next time.